Powered by CXO Junction in association with iValue InfoSolution. Today, we are having a solution partner, Imperva, and we'll be covering de-risk privacy exposure demo, which will be covered by Mr. Pratyush Sinha, who is the senior sales engineer at Imperva. After then, we'll be having an amazing fireside chat between Mitish Chitnavis, who is the CTO at iValue InfoSolution, Mr. Ganesh Prasad, who is the SE lead at Imperva, and Mr. Gaurav Batra, who is the founder and CEO of CXO Junction. And not forgetting the bumper prizes and giveaways. So that is one lucky winner at the end of this particular ABC of Cybersecurity series will be getting a chance to win a sleek, stylish Royal Enfield motorcycle who have attended a minimum of 15 sessions. And as you all know that in each session, there is a giveaway of an amazing OnePlus phone for the people who have commented on the LinkedIn post learnings of the previous session. So we'll be having a Wheel of Fortune round for the people who have commented on the LinkedIn post of our previous session, and not forgetting that 3 lucky winners on the basis of Kahoot quiz will be getting a chance to win Cyberfrat Gold membership, which is a worth of 3 lakhs, wherein it will be on the basis of Kahoot quiz. So make sure that you attend this session completely attentively, and I request everyone to sit back, relax, and enjoy the session. By the way, to introduce myself, my name is Iqbal Qureshi. I'm a manager operations at CXO Junction. So talking about CXO Junction, so CXO Junction is a community for enterprise leader to come and discuss the evolving scene of cybersecurity and risk management. So in order to facilitate these discussion, we have partnered with multiple subject matter experts. Likewise, today we have partnered with iValue InfoSolution at this ABC of Cybersecurity series. Talking about iValue InfoSolution, so iValue InfoSolution is a premium technology solutions aggregator. They adopts a consulting approach for enterprise digital transformation around application lifecycle management to address emerging business needs in a hybrid cloud model covering capex and opex need. iValue is proud to have served 6,000 plus customers across industry vertical through 900 plus partners and direct alliances with 65 plus best breed technology OEMs. And our solution partner of today's webinar is Imperva. So talking about Imperva, Imperva is a cybersecurity leader that helps organizations protect critical application APIs and data anywhere at scale and the highest ROI. With an integrated approach combining edge application security and data security, Imperva protects companies through all stages of their digital journey. Now I would like to hand over the stage to Mr. Ganesh Prasad from Imperva to take it forward. Over to you, Mr. Ganesh.
Hey, thanks, Iqbal. Good morning to everyone, and thanks a lot for taking your time out on a Friday to listen to us. And definitely, we'll try to throw some light around what exactly that we intend to do in next 30-40 minutes. And also happy to take any questions post that. So give you a background, obviously Imperva has been, and the philosophy has been all paths towards data, right? I mean, so we intend to protect all the data either through application side or data itself, I mean, in the backend. So that's what something that we intend to cover. That's the whole philosophy of Imperva has been. Now, with the latest data protection bill that is on the anvil, we just thought of taking that as a sensitive subject in terms of where do you kickstart in implementing such controls and control procedures, making sure that you're adhering to the privacy bill. And to be honest with you, while we speak privacy, but this particular method can be adopted for anything that is deemed sensitive as per your organization and business requirement. So what we intend to do with this is, there are 3 things that we intend to do. Where do you start? I mean, before you even speak about DPDP, knowing your backyard is very, very important. And knowing your backyard, not only where the sensitive information lies, but also with reference to what's the risk exposure of that sensitive information. So 3 major things that we will be discussing through a demonstration and the fireside chat is 1, to identify the sensitive information. So imagine that you have hundreds of databases, so out of which actually has got a dense worth of sensitive information, and that's the first key step. Second thing is, now you have identified out of those 100, only 10 databases required. How many of the dormant accounts that exist in those accounts? So that actually improve the risk posture, increases the risk posture and risk exposure, because you have a dormant account for a database which contains the sensitive information. And now the third part, obviously, is basically to understand the vulnerability state of that particular database. Now, if you see that, imagine you have 10 database which contains sensitive information. A couple of them contains a dormant account having a DB access to that database, and the database is vulnerable. Now, when you triangulate all these information, obviously you will get some sort of a heat map where you need to concentrate much on mitigating those risks in an immediate fashion. So that will help you to prioritize, to address and put controls, appropriate controls around it. So this is basic step that we feel that every enterprise should go through. So this is the whole premise in the background that Pratyush will be demonstrating those key three feature set. So we'll be making use of our product, subset functionality of the product, and then trying to demonstrate this feature set. And at the same time, we'll have a fireside chat to explain it in detail in terms of how can we address it and take it forward in terms of a DPDP and stuff like that. So that's the whole premise of this particular conversation. So I leave it to Pratyush to share the screen and start with a simple deck and the demonstration of the product itself. Pratyush, over to you.
All right. Thanks, Ganesh. I will share my deck. Give me just 1 minute. Okay, I hope it's now visible.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, all right, great. So Imperva does offer data security, data protection, and we have this whole framework where there are multiple things that we do. As you can see, these 5 pillars of data security is what we offer. Today's conversation is more around the first pillar, which is identification of sensitive data and the risk that is associated with those data. We do that with our 3-step approach of discovery, classification, and assessment. The idea is to first of all discover the databases, discover where sensitive data resides, assess the vulnerabilities that exist on those databases, and then to manage which users have got what rights, should they have those rights, do we need to revoke something. So all this identification of risk, data and risk is what we do in our first pillar of data protection framework. And this is what aligns more closely to data privacy. The first step is discovery of data, where data resides. So with our solution, we help you find where are those databases. If it's a network spread across multiple offices, multiple subnets, different business units, it becomes a bit hard to keep a track of where all the database services are running. Maybe you're not even aware if there are any rogue instances are running. So we help you achieve that discovery first. We present that inventory, that these are the databases that you have running in your environment. Of these, a few are relational databases like Oracle, MySQL, or MS SQL. There are a few big databases like MongoDB, but we help you with that inventory. Once the inventory is there, then the next step is to find out what data resides in which database server. You may have 500 different database servers, but instead of monitoring all of them all at once, we'll give you that visibility that of these 500, which are the ones where sensitive data resides. And what is the data type of that sensitive data? There could be a database where PII data resides, another one where maybe an account number is stored or a credit card number is stored. So where which data resides is something that we help you with. And you can run it on schedule. So let's say every week or every month, you want to see if there are new database servers that are getting added. You run the discovery on schedule and get a list per week or per month based on your use case. Compare it with the last set. That last week I had 50 different database servers running. Now I see 52. So which are these two that have been added? Are they needed? Are they rogue instances? So that is what we help you with. Once we have identified the which data resides in which database, which are the ones where sensitive data resides, the next piece is to understand if there are any vulnerabilities on those database servers, because these are your critical database servers where your sensitive data resides. So if there is any vulnerability, then there will be high chances that someone could exploit that vulnerability by sending a malicious request. So we give you visibility into what vulnerability exists on those database servers. We also identify the user rights, which user has what rights on which database server. Let us say there is a user who has not accessed the database in the last 6 months, but still has privileged user rights. They can modify the database entry. This visibility that this is a sensitive database, there are users who have privileged access, they have not been using it for the last 6 months, it's a dormant account. We give you this visibility so that you can take a call on to revoke the access, because that user's credential, if they get compromised, they could lead to a data breach. So this is the whole idea of this webinar on how do you control your data privacy. So just before I go into the demo, I'll again come back to our framework. So this, what we are covering today is this first part, which is identification of databases and the risks that are associated by discovering the databases where these data is, classifying what data resides in which database server, and then do an assessment of if there are any vulnerabilities or user rights that could lead to a data breach. So that was a quick introduction of what the solution is. And I'll quickly go to the console on how we do this. So this is the tool that we deploy in your network. This tool never sits inline. It is somewhere in one network. It need not to be present in every subnet or every BU. This is just in one network. We deploy this tool and run different kind of scan from this tool. The very first thing that we do is to discover where the database servers are, which database servers are. Now here, if you see, we have identified different database types. If you see the service, we have Oracle here, MariaDB, then again Oracle, MariaDB, Postgres, Oracle. So we have identified that these are the 6 database servers that are running in your environment. In order to run this scan, you need not to provide us any credential or anything. You just need to mention the subnet where you want to run this scan on. It could be one subnet 1/24, it could be multiple /24/16, up to you how you want to define it. But whichever servers are running database service in that subnet, we will find those out and will list it along with which database service, whether it is an Oracle or a MySQL or a MongoDB, that we also list. You get the details of the IP as well. There's a column for IP, there's a column for host name. So using this, you can get details of what is the exact IP address, which are the ports that are running. Now, there are organizations that run database servers on a custom port. They don't use the ones that are used by default, but they rather change the port. in that case as well, we can identify and accordingly will list the service if it is running on a custom port. So this is the first part of our data privacy, to give you visibility into how many database servers are there in the network. There, once we have identified it, you definitely can have a breakdown and a more graphical representation of how many Oracle databases, where are they running, how many Postgres, how many databases are on Linux operating system versus how many of them are on Windows operating system. So that all can be done with this discovery. Once we have done the discovery, comes the next part, where we now look at the data that resides within these database servers. So we are here under discovered servers, and now we go to classified DB data, that is classified database data. What we see here is which database server has what database type under which schema, under which table. So if you see here, you have your table mentioned, employee, vEmployee, and you have your data type mentioned, and you have your database server mentioned. So in this MS SQL 2019, we have national ID under a table called employee. There's another table within that database server called vEmployee, where phone numbers are mentioned. Similarly, there is email address mentioned. There is national email address again mentioned again, vEmployee, and let me just see if we have any other data type. So these are the data types that we have identified. But how many of these is sensitive? For every organization, the definition of sensitivity can be different. For one organization, an email address may not be sensitive. The whole, it's a financial organization and you're more concerned about maybe account numbers or credit card numbers. But for a different organization, maybe email is the most sensitive thing. So you can define what sensitivity means to you. Once you do that, you can filter out or find out which are the database servers where sensitive data resides. So currently, if you see here, these categories are for sensitive data. All of this exists in this MS SQL server. This is where we ran the scan against, found out that these are the sensitive data that resides in that server. Within the server, the database name as well, under which database name does this reside, and what is the schema as well. So if we see the very first row, here we have account number under purchasing. We also have address under human resources. So based on data type or based on schema, you can find out. So let's say you want to see which are the schema where account number is. It can be just one schema, it can be multiple schemas. So here, if you see in the data type, the first 5 rows are all account number and spread across different schema of your database server. Similarly, email address, it's being used in multiple schemas on different database as well. While the first few rows are for AdventureWorks, here in the middle, if you see email address and AdventureWorks, the last few are under different database like HIPAA HR or SuperVeda-DB. So the sensitive information, now data breach can happen from any of the database. So we will give you visibility which are the database where this sensitive data resides. You can also see based on, again, a more graphical representation of the distribution of sensitive data. You have your account number, address, email address, payment card. Now, these are what we capture by default. A lot of customers have requirements that may not be captured by default. So maybe there is a particular data type that you're interested in, which is not account number. Maybe it's an Aadhaar number that you're most interested in. So in that case, you have the ability to define your data type yourself. You work with us or you define it yourself. Whatever data type you want to monitor, you can do that. We have customers who monitor PAN card numbers. very very critical information. So when they run the scan, their goal is to find out which are the databases where PAN card is, and that is what they want to understand. So we run scans and find out PAN card. So accordingly, you can decide what data type you are interested in. If it fits out of the box, well and good. If not, you define it yourself and run this scan. So that's the classification of data that you do. Again, the idea is to give you the visibility. We initially gave you the visibility on how many database servers are there. And now comes the part where we are showing you which are the database servers, where sensitive data resides, and what type of sensitive data, be it email address, phone number, accounting information, but what type of sensitive data resides. The next piece that we do is that we have now identified that these are the database servers where sensitive data resides. So I need more focus, more monitoring on these database servers. And one of the ways to start monitoring is to first find out which users have access to this database server and what can they do with that access. Do they have DB admin rights? Do they have privileged user access? Are there any users who have access but have not accessed the database in last 1 month? So maybe their access should be removed. To do that, we have what we call as database user rights or user rights management. This is where we identify, first of all, how many users have access to database, how many of them are DBAs, how many of them are non-DBAs. So right here, if you see, there's a breakdown of DBA versus non-DBA users, that in your environment, while ideally we would want DBAs to have all the access, but if there are cases where you need some other people to have access to your database apart from DBA, you'll get the split as well, that in your environment, how many DBAs have access versus how many non-DBAs have access. Which are the users or the roles who have most access to the database server? Here, if you see system admin, and then you have your other users as well, which have access rights on these DBA, on these database servers. So we give you that breakdown as well, that these are the 5 roles that you have created. And on these have most rights, they can make most changes on the database server. Once you have this information, you can take a call. Are these roles really needed? Because the more roles you allocate, the more people you give access to, there are more chances of breach. So are these really needed, or should we cut down on some of the rules? But that visibility, instead of doing that or working with DBA for every individual database separately, with just one solution, you get a visibility for the entire network. You can also see when was a grant permission created, or who are the users who can assign roles, who can grant permission to a different user. So let's say there are 5 users, and see that, and when you log in, you see that these 5 users all have privileged user rights. But who gave them those rights? Because those were not needed. You come to this tool and you find out who were the users, what rights they currently have, and who gave them that grant rule. Once they have the grant rule, what is the change that they can do in the schema? Can they just do insert? Can they just do update? So what all they can do is something that you can, that visibility you can get through our solution. So this was the part for data discovery, database discovery, classification of data, segregation of data between sensitive, non-sensitive, segregation of sensitive data between data types, PII data, financial information, email address, so that segregation, and then user rights, which users have what rights on which database server. But there's another critical piece that is more related to the database server itself. Are there any vulnerabilities in the database? Because while rights is one thing, if you have inherent vulnerabilities in the database, people can just exploit those vulnerabilities. So we help you with that vulnerability as well, wherein we highlight what are the vulnerabilities that exist in your network. So for example, the very first one that you see, that system admin login is still not disabled. So whenever you deploy a database, by default, an account, SA account gets created with default credentials. Generally, it's a good practice to have that account disabled and use or create some other DB admin accounts with custom passwords and use that for all the changes. However, if this system admin account is still enabled, there will be attackers who will try to use this system admin account with different password sets and try to log in because they already at least know the username. So, and the best practice is to have it disabled. But if there's any database in the entire network where it is enabled, we will find that out and will highlight that. Not only that, because again, SQL, not everyone is an expert in SQL. So what we also do is we give you a fix as well, that what should you do to resolve this vulnerability. So if you see here at the bottom, there's a section of recommended fix. So this is what we have found out, and this is what you should do in your database server to fix this vulnerability. And that exists for all the vulnerabilities that we find. Again, a critical vulnerability that exists in database, or not just database, in any network, is when you do not set the password to expire. The same password, if you keep on using it for years and years, there are high chances that at some point it will get breached and someone will do a dictionary attack and use those passwords. So generally, systems should have a password expiration 30 days, 90 days, but you generally configure these things. But if there's any database server where this is still not configured, you see here, login password is disabled. There's no password expiration that is configured. So again, identify that there's one particular database server where the password is still not configured to expire or, after a certain duration. And what you need to do to fix it, that again, we have as recommended fix. So we are not only giving you visibility, but we're also providing you with the fix as well. And this is just a sample of what we can do. We have a very detailed list of a scan based on existing standards defined by DISA or CIS, where we look for open vulnerabilities or CVEs, that this CVE, are you still impacted by a particular CVE or not? And if you are, then what is the recommended fix? So here you can see list of all the scans that you can run on your database servers to find out vulnerabilities. And these are not database specific, because you have things for Cassandra, you have for MySQL, you have for Postgres, you have for MS SQL, you have for Aurora. So our coverage is widest in the industry. We cover almost every database that exists, and you can run these scans. You can also have your own policies defined, policies for, let's say, if there are, if you are using a DB2 and there are patches that are missing, instead of logging into every DB2 and finding the status, and let's say you have multiple DB2s, why don't you, or you can rather just use this tool and find out which are the DB2s where these patches are missing, and what will the fix for that. You can also have your custom assessment test created. So while we have these out of the box already available, you can define your own criteria for, let's say, I'll give you an example. In case you want to see whether your databases are encrypted or not. Now, generally, whenever you encrypt a database, there's a particular file that gets created. So you can run a scan whether that file is present or not. If it is not present, then the database is not encrypted, and you can then work with your team as to work on the steps on to encrypt the database. But this will again give you that visibility into what vulnerabilities exist and what you can do to fix those vulnerabilities. So yeah, this is what I wanted to cover as part of demo. and I'll pass it back to Ganesh. And if you have any questions, then please let us know.
Okay, thanks, Pratyush. This is just to give you a subset functionality. Obviously, we go much beyond that in terms of monitoring it for policy violation against the compliance and stuff. But this is with the DP, that is the Data Protection and Privacy Act, being on the anvil and the very interesting subject for every CXOs to know. We just thought of picking this subject to concentrate much on data discovery, classification, and expose the risk, so that you can work proactively to mitigate those risks in that particular sense. Now, while these functionalities exist, and probably the next stage is, as you would have seen in the protection bill as well, it is not only the data controller, which is yourself. It is also that if you are processing the data from your customers or some of your customers, you're an extended arm and offering services. So you might hold that. So you might have to do that third-party risk assessment as well, making sure that the same sort of a risk assessment is also carried out by your third parties, which is logical extension, which is your service provider. So that is something which you will have to do it again. But the end of the day, the intention is to expose the privacy data and the risk associated with that. To be honest with you, you can double click on it and do a larger risk assessment. This is just a very rudimentary and the start of risk assessment that you might want to do. It might be a kickstart to know the heat map for you to double click like third parties and stuff. But we just sort of letting you know the key feature set that is available, and you can also get into consulting and then know the risk heat map before you actually embark on any other technology and stuff. So that's something which we wanted to sort of highlight. So with that, so Iqbal and Gaurav, over to you for the next session.
Sure. I hope you're able to hear me and see me fine. Ganesh, amazing talk, and Pratyush, I think the demo which you have shown is really great, really helpful. I just see a lot of advantage for this, for users to use it. So I hope, guys, you had the great insight on this. So let me take this forward, and I will like to invite Mitish as well on the dice with Ganesh. Hi, Mitish.
Hi, Gaurav. How are you?
Good, good. Hey,
Good.
Ganesh.
Good to see you.
Okay, I think a few questions coming from the in the chat as well, and we will take that definitely shortly. So before that, to start with, maybe Ganesh, the very first question, I will like to add, because you have given this a great demo. So what are some real world examples of organizations that have successfully used de-risk to protect sensitive data and mitigate risk? So if you can give some insights, case studies, or any examples on real time.
No, absolutely. So to be honest with you, this is not new. Collecting this privacy and sensitive information. If you could remember in the year of 2015, when GDPR was at play, people started doing it. The only thing is DP from an India perspective, it is now relevant for Indian context and Indian citizens. But this was practiced in 2015 itself from various customers, especially in the Europe, and the service providers who are offering their customers to Europe. And I think they are very well versed with this. So now with the DPDP coming in, that is Data Protection and Privacy Act bill coming in, then obviously every customer in India has to go through it. So there are multiple, customers that they are trying to do this activity, and it is across industry. It is not only with BFSI. It started out with BFSI because RBI came out very rigorously to put in such controls around privacy and transaction data and stuff. But right now, with this particular bill coming in, obviously this will this is spreading across multiple industries like telecom and things like that. So obviously we see that this is basically to be adopted by every customer. There are a lot many case studies. Obviously, we can share it one-on-one, but yeah, across industries, we have case studies who's actually doing it from a de-risk perspective.
Sure. And taking this, you mentioned DPDPA bill. So maybe Mitish, I will like to ask you, how can de-risk privacy risk exposure help organization in effectively complying with Digital Personal Data Protection Act, which we have now, or any other privacy related regulations? What do you think its impact and it's going to be need of the hour for other organizations today?
See, I think privacy and personal data was always at a question, right?
Yeah.
And I think organizations were always behind protecting that data. It's now that it is being regulated. But if you look at ITES vertical, typically the services that we render to our US customers or
Mhm.
US, UK, Australia, and all these customers, at that point in time, we used to uh, ensure implementation or privacy protection for the data on likes of GLBA, Data Protection Act of UK, I know 98, and then we have GDPR now. So I believe it was always coming. It was always expected that we would have our own law and regulation around it. And I believe that it's key at the end of the day. It has to be protected by every organization. And the only difference that has happened now is that there are penalties to it. And that would that means all the CISOs, CIOs, chief privacy officers, everybody have kind of a sword on their neck. Okay, and they
Exactly.
would, yeah, and it has to be protected. It is absolutely important as such. That's my view.
Sure. Thank you. And Ganesh, I will like to come back to you and maybe I just go to the demo. So there are many different modules you have there. So the thing which we in the context of discovering user access to sensitive information, how does the user right management module streamline the review and approval process? What are the practical advantage of this module for businesses?
See, the key thing is, to be honest, the various customers would have implemented identity management and access governance and things like that. What we are trying to do is we are trying to bring everything under one single roof to elevate. That's it. That is where it is called as de-risk, right? Because what user, there are multiple things that we have observed so far. Like, say, for example, the production data being replicated into a UAT where SA is a username and password. Unfortunately, even the developer knows.
Mm-hmm.
And now, if you don't know that, I mean, there is a UAT database or a test and development database which has got a production like data inside, and then you're trying to sort of see, and that becomes a risk exposure. And anyone can use it. The moment that I get inside your network, then obviously I do have an access to your data, or simple things like that. And there has been instances where I joined in as an organization as a DBA.
Mm-hmm.
I was given an access and I quit the organization. How your identity management and governance has been very effective in terms of removing my identity. It is, to be honest with you, we see a little, I mean, we see a delta of close to around 20 to 40%. In a sense that what organization expect that identity management and access governance should function, but on the ground, that is not the case. And that's the reason that you see that, I mean, stolen credentials, even if you see Verizon data breach report, still the login credentials, and because they know that excessive privilege has been given to a user who might be dormant, might not be. But at the same time, we are trying to reduce the risk of knowing that, okay, Ganesh Prasad was a guy who was a DBA. By the way, he logged in 6 months back. I don't know what is he doing from past 6 months. So what do you want to do with this data, with this user? The more number of days that you keep it, more number of risk exposure that you get. So that is what we intend to cover it up. And while this particular information is also, there is some conversation going on in DLP and stuff like that. Trust me, there are various technologies which can do this job. But end of the day, when we call it as a de-risk, as a one overall framework, you need to know all these three information under one single roof. And that is a very, very great value of a technology like Imperva. I mean, where we are trying to bring in everything and then give you one holistic risk heat map to ensure that you can take a decision faster instead of correlating that information across various technology.
Amazing. And I think just following up on the answer which you have said, like, we are saying that the information, we are triaging it from the different stages. And can you explain like how this de-risk generates the risk heat map for the database? And how does it assist in visualizing and prioritizing data exposure or vulnerabilities?
Yeah, so from a visualization perspective, obviously there are multiple methods. I mean, to be honest with you, when you call it as a risk management, sky's limit what you can speak, right? I mean, so but what we thought was at least as a rudimentary and start off somewhere we need to kickstart, right? As a risk assessment, especially around the privacy. We just thought of using only 3 vectors to identify and elevate the risk. So imagine, I mean, the way that you need to look at the data is that's the example that I took while giving an introduction as well. I have 100 databases, 10 contain sensitive information. Fantastic. Now I know that out of 100, only 10 is in the scope where I need to focus much on. Out of the 10, there are 2 databases where I see a dormant account. No, that 2 databases became much more vulnerable. Now the same, I'm not talking about 100 databases. Now I'm streamlining that, and that's the reason that is called triangulation, because I'm streamlining out of 100 to 10, 10 to 2, and when I scan a vulnerability, I found that there are 1 database containing maximum number of vulnerability. Now instead of focusing much on 100, my control and control effectiveness and or control that I need to put in place majorly to start off with one that database which has got a dormant account, sensitive information, and vulnerable in nature. So, and that is how you need to triangulate and come. And to be honest with you, again, just to let everyone know, the risk management is a very larger subject. You can go above and beyond this, but we just start kickstarting somewhere. And this can be a very wonderful start to kickstart the risk assessment as far as privacy is concerned.
Oh, fair enough. Thanks for that insights, Ganesh. And Mitish, coming to you, as Mitish has mentioned, a lot of information about the module, then de-risk. So you must be having, helping them with the implementation process. But maybe on ground, I will like to understand from you that some insights into implementation process of de-risk within the organization, and what challenges might companies face, or how they can overcome them from your experience, if you can share some insights on that.
Right. So basically, what happens is that typically data discovery is the first step that is absolutely important within an organization. Within data discovery, obviously, there are 2 parts which Pratyush and Ganesh also mentioned. That is around how do we discover structured data. Structured data, we all know, it's very easy to be discovered per se. But how do we discover unstructured data? And that is where the whole process starts from. So first we look at the data elements, discover the data. Then we look at, how do we classify, how organizations would classify that data, like sensitive, all of that classification. And then what are the existing controls around that data? Okay. Because there are too many tools doing the same job doesn't mean that you're secure, right? You need to have a very focused tool around data protection and so on and so forth. So implementation typically starts from data discovery of structured and unstructured data within wherever you have stored it within your environment, within your infrastructure. And then the control mechanism starts of implementing this. So we face a lot of difficulties during implementation is in the first 2 steps only.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Because not that everybody is aware. Okay. So from a privacy standpoint, and if we have to start protecting that kind of information, so we look at data discovery, data classification, is there encryption, are we doing pseudonymization of data, then is DLP implemented, how do you implement data erasure. But out of all of this, the most important thing that we see is how do we create that privacy awareness for the data that is handled by the employees of that organization. Okay, because eventually the data still flows within the organization. I'm not even looking at how data is transferred outside the organization, right? And privacy related to that, but within the organization. And so from an implementation standpoint, the first, I think the toughest part is discovery, and then all other controls and control mechanisms that come into play.
Fair enough. Awesome answer, I think, Mitish. So, Ganesh, specifically, when we are talking about this de-risk and privacy exposure, I will like to understand the iValue role from you here.
No, absolutely. I mean, iValue has been doing a fantastic consulting engagement in the area of security, right? So, what more that you want? I mean, if they are our service partners in terms of executing this on our technology, so it is basically, to be honest, the technology has got its own features and functionalities and stuff. Someone has to click that button to extract this information. So, who's going to do that? It is obviously in association with iValue. So that is where we see a logical partnership and an extended arm in terms of one, executing this as a consulting engagement in the sense that any of the customers are free to sort of subscribe for this and then understand, okay, I would like to know my backyard. Obviously, iValue along with Imperva, we get into a consulting engagement, quickly do a risk assessment, give them their backyard as a one-time assessment. At the same time, if the customer is interested in actually going forward to do a what do you call, implement the tool so that they are aware of it in real time, not as aftermath, then iValue will come in as an implementation partner to implement the technology itself and implement those use cases against DPDP, and then I mean put those dashboards, integrate with other technologies like SOAR, SIM, and stuff like that, where we see a lot of value coming in there. So this is what the value that I could see from iValue. I think Mitish can add more to it, but obviously this is what the logical partnership with iValue comes in, right, Mitish?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important point that you've touched upon is that while we do all the consulting engagements, the important aspect of protecting the data comes from integrating the entire stack around protecting a privacy or private information of an individual. So that entire stack, along with implementing the best of the breed product from Imperva on the or from a compliance and from a protection standpoint. So that's where we stitch the entire story together and we work with the customers to implement that.
And by
Awesome.
the way, you have already a customer who's asking for VA integration, so you can take it offline.
Okay, yeah,
Absolutely.
there will be many.
Yeah.
Before I have just one question for each of you at the end. And before that, for my audience, I just want to announce that we are 100 on the call right now, and I will like to capture this moment. So be camera ready. In 3 to 4 minutes from now, we will click a group picture before we go to the Kahoot Wheel of Fortune and all. And now coming back to this, Mitish Ganesh has given a great value to the iValue proposition here, right? So I want you to give it back. So my question directly is like, if CXOs, CISOs, or CEOs, who maybe, considering implementing de-risk, what would you say are the top 3 compelling reasons they should invest in this solution to protect their company's privacy and sensitive data?
First, I think most important thing, okay, is at the database level, okay, the security observability that can be provided by Imperva, okay, that is phenomenal. I mean, that level and creating a risk scorecard out of it, which actually helps all the CXOs on this call probably to de-risk their entire framework of compliance and so on and so forth. So I think that is the first most important thing. Uh, Once you have that implemented, everybody looks for support on the entire product. Many a times we end up buying a product but not utilizing it fully, not implementing it fully. But when we come to de-risk and we are looking at compliance and we are looking at this particular piece of information which has to be implemented uh, and protected, that's where it's a game changer, because that's what is needed today. It's a need of an hour per se, and that's how the second part comes in. So support part comes in there, okay, because you at end of the day there would be many players, okay, but the most important factor is how do we handle our customer in his journey to de-risk his own business. And that's how we look at it. We don't look at it from a product implementation standpoint and just implement a product and get out. And that's what is the focus uh, from Imperva, and that's what they have been guiding us, my team, on how do we look at a customer engagement. And they don't want to look at it as a sell the product and get out kind of thing. The number 3 part is how easy it is to use. How do we build skill sets around this? How customer can build skill sets? And I think that's where uh, I believe we score heavily. Okay, so those are the 3 points. And then the fourth point is we believe in perfection, right? We all believe we need a perfect product. And this product is coming from Germans. That means we don't have to talk about perfection. It's by
Oh.
default in their culture and their DNA. So
I think this fourth point, maybe let me take that back to Ganesh, and ask him directly when you're saying about perfection, but not only perfection, but how it differentiates. So when we talk about this de-risk product, how it differentiates itself from the other privacy risk exposure solution in the market. So Ganesh, if you can give me the last insights, and then we can engage our audience for the questions or with the group photo. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So, a couple of things that I wanted to highlight was one, as I said, bringing all these aspects under one single roof for a CXO to look at. You can use DLP, but DLP will not cover the vulnerability piece of it. DLP will not cover the URM piece of it, right? I mean, that's something which is basically you need to integrate with the other access governance piece and stuff like that to bring all these under one single roof. So one is basically to bring in effective risk scoring of those databases, keeping these triangulation in place. One. Second thing is, this is, as I said, this is just a kickstart of protecting your privacy. The next is, how do you audit the data? How do you make sure that there is no policy violated? And how do you ensure that when you're in front of the auditors, what all the information that you have at your disposal to ensure that, I mean, you're actually sort of giving it back. I mean, so that's something which is taking it forward from an auditing standpoint, policy violation standpoint, risk analytics standpoint, a user behavior analysis standpoint. So this is just a kickstart of the journey. Whatever that we spend 1 hour, imagine we haven't even scratched the surface, but this is just to begin the journey of protecting the privacy data and moving forward. So our interest is, let's kickstart somewhere. And obviously we'll take you through the journey of the entire policy protection as well as risk assessment and things like that. And that is what something that we intend to carry out. And that is what our key USB is. That is second aspect. And the third aspect is, nowadays the data protection is also not with reference to database alone. This database queries are coming from applications as well. Now, how do we cover right from the end user who's calling up for a report, which is executing a SQL query in the backend? How do we cover up the entire chain and then give you the risk exposure? So if I were to be a CRM customer or CRM admin, I have all rights to sort of take out all the privacy related information about my customers. Now, and there are multiple managers like a CRM. So I don't need to launch any attack on the database. I can go through a legitimate method of application, generate a report, and then do it. But to be honest with you, that visibility is not complete today. So we are trying to provide you the exposure, not only at the database level, right from application all the way till the database. And that is what we intend to cover the entire gamut to provide that. But as far as de-risk is concerned, it is only with reference to structured and unstructured data. But we are in a position to take you through the complete journey of protecting that privacy related information across the database, on the cloud or on the on-prem, or big data analytics, the flavors and things like that. So we support close to around 260 flavors of database. So now, obviously, I didn't know that there is a database called Cockroach, to be honest with you, till the time that I logged. I mean, yeah, it's a strange name. So obviously, I mean, so that's the name of the database, and we support it by the way. So I mean, those kind of things. So we support it, and then that is what our key differentiation is.
Awesome. And I think amazing information maybe on this call. I would like to say, guys, do you know there was a database named Cockroach? I was not. But if you know, give me a thumbs up. If not, say whatever I don't know or whatever. So put in some chat. So if you learned something new, okay, great. So people knew about this, okay, but it was new for me. So all the very best, Ganesh, to you and your team. You have an amazing solution. Mitish, all the best for, you get some great, what do you call implementation things. People are loving this session. They are saying it's a great value add, and together we are doing a great job, I guess.